Hello everyone, and welcome to one of our Zelda theory discussions. A lot of you like to send us these top 10 or sometimes it's even top 20 or more lists of Zelda theories that websites like... I'm not going to name any, just to not upset anyone who may or may not work for it.
Websites, we'll say.
But there's an example that I sent Daniel earlier where someone who in a different community, the Dragon Ball Z community, actually posted on Twitter and called this person out because not only was the article wrong, but the image they had used for it was the one that he had paid for and commissioned from another artist, and he wasn't notified that they used his the image that he basically owned to promote their article that they were making money on. So he called out the writer, and the writer replied, said, "I apologize, I'm sorry, I don't even write for that website anymore. I only wrote 2 articles. I didn't even get to write what I wanted to write. They told me what they wanted me to write about, and after I wrote it, they told me that I had to follow their formula and write it the way they wanted it to be wrote, that they already had a formula structure for the articles on their websites. And if you know any of these websites, it's basically copy and paste from other websites, because you'll see the same top 10 list, but then it'll just be like rearranged, and sometimes there might be a new one. And then there are some that just don't even make sense. So Daniel and I get these. Sometimes we have a guest, they go through with us, and we'll either go through the whole list or we'll just pick out the ones that we don't like.
It actually makes me feel bad a bit roasting all of these articles and stuff, because it's like, you know, it's almost like they were forced into it. We're like, oh, here we've been just like absolutely torching these poor writers.
Yeah. And the same way that I'm sure Tony does. Oh, Jesus. Perfect. All right. So, and I'm sure the same way that Tony does on his Hard for Games channel, I'm sure that whenever you talk about something on your channel, if you have it written down or scripted, or if you're playing through and you're talking about what you're playing, you're never just coming up with random stuff off the top of your head. Or if you do talk about something specific, especially if it's something that other people may not know, then you'll want to show what you're talking about on screen.
Yeah, of course. You always have to have some sort of like backup for what you're saying. And, you know, I mean, my content's a little bit less riff and chat based too. So like generally it's not necessarily scripted, but it's heavily outlined, I guess, and researched.
Right. So. Like one video that I liked was the Wind Waker demo thing that could have possibly been a beta, but it turned out that it wasn't. Someone sent it to you to check out, or I forgot exactly what the
it's funny
situation was.
Because we did find a Wind Waker beta, but that video didn't do nearly as well as the disc that turned out
fool
to be
me
a hoax.
once.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, people don't really care about this beta content, but no. What's that?
I was going to say I mentioned your Wind Waker video because we happened to have you on a Wind Waker video that we did talking about beta stuff. So
yeah, but basically there was a disc that was floating around, and owner said it might be possible beta of Wind Waker at a different title screen, but that was the extent of it. That was literally all that was different. Build date on the disc once we dumped it was the exact same as retail. So basically the way Nintendo would do it with their first party GameCube properties, you know, it would be like, it would tell you an exact to the moment date that everything was compiled, right? And then it would be impossible for 2 different builds to be compiled at the same second, right? So that's how we functionally how we figured it out. There were other clues too that it was a fake, but yeah.
All right, so that's an example of what I would say professionals, or people at least that care about what they do, would do, is they wouldn't necessarily just make up random stuff or whatever. And if they did come across information, they would at least try to show it on screen. Even if it's beta stuff, sometimes you do have to speculate, like what could this item have been used for. Like Wind Waker has the iron boots in the game, but they're not in the game, so it's like, where could you have got them? Who knows? But anyways,
they are in the game though.
Yeah, they're in the game. That's just an example though, because we were talking about Wind Waker, so it's tangentially related. But anyways, so that's what we do. And then when we talk about these other theories, we try discussing why they aren't even necessarily theories, because technically a theory would be something that you can't necessarily prove, because it's not Miyamoto coming out saying like, yes, this is true. So you have to, if you can't disprove it with in-game facts, then it holds up as a theory. But if it's something that you can just point to in-game text and be like, no, it says this, so that can't be true, then that's kind of what we do, and we explain that, and we'll get a lot of people that'll get, there's a lot of people that like it in the comments because they're like, oh, you cleared up this misinformation, or I used to think this, but now thank you guys, because now I know that like a big one used to be that we see a lot on those pages is there's a theory that the Kokiri in Ocarina of Time became the Koroks in Wind Waker, but that's just something the game tells you. That's like saying I have a theory that the grass is green. That's, you can't really put that. Yeah. So it's stuff like that, and we explain it, and then some people will like it and some people will get mad, and that's maybe a bad example, but it's some of the stuff that we see. So this time, because some of the people that I seen in the comments did like it, but then there was like an equal amount of people that thought we were being rude, I thought we would kind of turn it around on ourselves and discuss theories that we either came up with that ended up being completely wrong, or that we used to like until we realized that it was just stupid. So our guest, Tony, from Hard for Games, go ahead and you start us off.
So I might not be the best person to start because I'm a lot less involved with Zelda theory than you guys are. So
you do more factual beta stuff on your channel.
Well, yeah, but I also just deal with them less. So for you guys, my understanding is like you mentioned, stuff that you've believed in the past or maybe had heard of, or like For me, it's more so stuff that I've looked up or just happened to have heard or looked up yesterday. And it turned out they were theories, and I thought they were just kind of dumb. So it's a little different. But one that I looked up the other day was Every Game is a Dream. And you probably have heard this one before.
Perfect example.
We talked about this one a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So, Link wakes up and but hey, he wakes up. He's not still asleep. So probably not still a dream. And even if it was, who cares? What does it matter? So it's a kind of a theory that has like no functional effect on gameplay or Zelda lore. It literally just exists because Link wakes up from a slumber in the beginning of many games. It's just a Zelda trope, and someone ran with it in a weird direction. Another one that I'd heard about in the past was the fourth piece of the Triforce theory. So there's the three triangles, and then there's the empty triangle in the middle, right? And they're like, well, there's three triangles. That makes a Triforce. Triangle, Triforce. But there's an empty triangle. That must mean there's a missing piece. Well, no, not necessarily. It's just that the way the triangles piece together make another triangle. So there's an empty spot.
It's funny, actually, Miyamoto himself debunked that theory because enough people asked him. The man himself.
Yeah, I've never seen anything in any Zelda game to indicate that there was an additional piece of the Triforce in the middle or anything like that. It's just sort of something that would be fun if it existed, but it's just kind of like whatever. One that I did like for a long time, but functionally doesn't really matter, is the Majora's Mask Link is dead theory, and he's kind of going through the afterlife, so to speak. It conflicts with the idea that he becomes the hero Shade for Twilight Princess, so it can't really be correct, especially since the hero Shade is like an adult who died of somehow. But the Link is dead theory had kind of like a cool thing, but when you break it down, it doesn't really make a ton of sense.
Yeah, that was one from one of the comments that we got on one of the videos from a few podcasts back. Someone said something like, I forgot exactly what, like he because that's a theory that game theory made popular.
They
So he
didn't,
was.
yeah,
He
didn't
said,
invent, made popular.
He said something in the comment along the lines of, "You guys must have no idea what you're talking about." And then he basically said that in longer words, but then he immediately contradicted himself by saying, even though the theory isn't true, at least MatPat is entertaining. So it's like he said that we were wrong because we said it wasn't true, but it is, or whatever. And then he kind of went back the opposite of what he had just written. And I sent it to Daniel, and I was like, I don't understand this comment. Is he complimenting us? Or?
I haven't watched game theory in a long time. I do remember him doing that episode a while back, but I think when your job is to create theory videos, they have to all be very entertaining. You have to produce a convincing argument, even if it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. But that's not. I think that's kind of like not the point of his videos. It's just like fun fan theory brainstorming stuff. Like I don't. It's kind of like if I were. I mean, some of them are like so out there, and like, but they're just ridiculous and fun. You know, it would be like if I watch, you know. If I read a fiction novel and be like, well, this must be true. I read it. You know what I mean? Like it's just there for fun.
Yeah.
Right. It's not really in most cases much beyond that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the content.
Yeah.
Like, and I will say as well, MatPat himself is very he's very outspoken about the fact that they are just theories. They're not like fact, you know, at any point. Never does he ever say that's just a fact at the end of his videos, right?
But that theory that you mentioned, Daniel and I, we always kind of sigh when we see it because it's one that's always like number one on all of those copy paste
someone
lists.
Comes out swinging with that theory, and it is one of those ones where it's like that you do the tiniest shred of digging and it instantly falls apart, even if you come out the gate with it and you're like, oh, that's a neat idea. As soon as you do like the smallest ounce of research, it just collapses.
And that's another one. Not Aonuma, but the story writer or the writer for the game. In an interview when they were doing the 3D remake, he was asked about that theory, and he said that looking at each of the main areas and assigning just one emotion to it, like just this place represents sadness, this place represents grief or whatever, he said that does it sort of an injustice because there's many different characters all with many different emotions in each of the areas, and that if you're playing through the game just looking at one area and that light, then you're not playing it the way that it was meant to be played or whatever. But anyways, do you have any more that you want to mention before we go to Daniel?
The only other one that the only other one that I'd liked was also Majora's Mask, and it's probably incorrect. It's been so long since I've read it, but it's functionally like, and I just thought of it now, so I didn't research it. But years ago, I had read like there was basically like Termina was sort of like a religiously opposite space from Hyrule, and that you see a lot of the Triforces, and they're like on the underside of statues and upside down and like sort of like spitting on the gods, and we have our own that we have our giants. We don't need Hylia, we don't need this, we don't need that, which I'd always thought was like held up better than the Link is dead theory, but functionally is, even if it was real, is so far in the background it's more of an aesthetic. But I think for a while people held on to that theory quite a bit.
I think I
remember reading that years ago. I think it was like the Stone Tower of Babel.
Yeah, there's these statues that have their tongue sticking out, and then like for some reason they have the upside down Triforce on their tongue.
Yeah, and stuff like that. Where we were like, it was very much like aesthetically like throwing a middle finger to the belief of the Triforce and such, and it kind of being, like that, which, I mean, I guess it's kind of like it's a theory. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but it's like it's not that's functionally significant to the gameplay.
Right, but that's also a perfect example of one of those theories that can't be disproven or proven, so it does classify as a theory. So that's a good example of what would be a good theory, whether you like it or not.
Oh, good.
So I was actually going to ask you, just so people know that you're not constantly hating on everything like Daniel and I, if you had a particular theory that you did enjoy or that you did like, but you mentioned that one. So do you want to mention another one before Daniel gives his? And we'll each just give one really quick. That way we can kind of
I don't know if there's like a particular theory that I've liked or enjoyed. I've always just like, one of the main reasons I play Zelda is for the lore. Like I remember having the Link to the Past manual and reading the story of Ganon and his thieves going into the holy pure land of light and like trying to steal and them all fighting, and I remember reading it over and over and being like, oh, this is so cool. So it's like, I don't know, like if I've ever like latched onto it, a ton of like the theories per se, just so much as like the canon lore, but I guess nothing's coming into theory wise, it's just coming to the top of my head, so I'm saying that instead. I don't know.
All right. Daniel, do you have anything? Oh, there's a $2 thing. Will Breath of the Wild 2 be linear? Absolutely
I'm
not.
gonna say no.
Yeah.
They already came out with this big non-linear game, and they're like, we're gonna do more of that. So, yeah.
No, yeah, you're gonna have the exact same world, and then more other worlds. So, because we already like the only thing they've shown off was something that wasn't even in the original game, but they're still including basically everything that was in the original game. So. It'll be even more non-linear than Breath of the Wild, if that's possible. Daniel, do you have your theory?
Right. One that I guess used to like, but kind of walked away from. This was one that was, and I made a video about this ages ago on an old channel that I used to work with, not even my current channel, but because I used to do a lot of side work for other people, but the theory was pre-Breath of the Wild. This was 2016. We had just seen trailers and stuff like that, and there was a lot of
Zelda
theories going on about. I think at this point, this is like E3 2016. So it was like Zelda Wii U, like 2014, 2015, and they were teasing it, and then they came out E3 2016. They revealed it's Breath of the Wild, and then delayed it. No, this was actually after they had set a release date. So we had the big E3 2016 trailer, and they actually showed the name, and they showed a bunch of cool gameplay stuff.
Yeah, so it was after the demo was playable.
Right, but there was a lot story-wise that we just like didn't know what the heck was going on, basically at all, because we just had those E3 demos and stuff like that to go off of. And so there was a lot of people latched onto this one line of dialogue in the very beginning of the game where Zelda says to Link, you are our light that must shine on Hyrule once again. And everybody got like really attached to that one half of a sentence where she says once again. And they all came rolling out with theories. And there were some good ones, even one that I subscribed to, there's where this is the Link from like a previous game who died, and then they put him in stasis to resurrect him.
Right before that game came out, Nintendo made it canon when the first book that Tony mentioned earlier, that one of the timelines was a what if, like what if Link dies, this happens. So yeah, that's why
there was a lot of speculation. Like there was one channel I saw that speculated it was Link from A Link to the Past because of his sideburns. That was like their big piece of evidence.
Yeah, another example of a bad theory.
Yeah, but there were some good ones about it. And one of the big theory that was out there that I actually quite liked was that it was Link from Ocarina of Time, who in the Fallen Hero timeline he had failed and died and lost to Ganondorf, and so then he was put in this resurrection chamber, and then that's why when he wakes up, because he had lost, that's why Hyrule's completely in ruins when he wakes up. And so there was, again, like in hindsight, that's only half true. Technically, yes, that is a Link that failed and died and was put in the Shrine of Resurrection, but it wasn't that Link. It was a new one still.
Yeah.
So, but it was a fun theory. It was a good time, and everybody was picking apart every tiny detail, and they're like, he's got a stripe on his sleeve, and we were all going nuts, right? So, but as soon as the game came out, we were all wrong about it. But it was still a good fun time back then, right? So
yeah.
All right, so
Oh,
there
wait, we
was.
got another chat.
Oh, do we?
We do.
Oh yeah, it just popped up.
Just popped up.
Opinions on Link's Green Magic and Breath of the Wild 2 trailer.
Oh, thank you, Tony.
From Victor Pulse, Puls.
We have a couple of videos going more in depth on it than we will here, but I think it's essentially just the hand that catches Link. That after it catches him,
Right.
then he gets the power from it somehow. In the same way that all of the champions also give Link some special power, and then this might be a new ability that you get to start with this game. So,
Telekinesis or something.
It's. I feel like effectively, I think it'll replace like the Sheikah Slate, in a sense. But like we don't really know anything about it. We saw like a half a second of Link going like ah in the trailer, and that was it, right? So,
Yeah.
And there is concept art though of Link having his hand removed and then like a mechanical thing. So maybe they took that idea or that concept and just instead of something mechanical,
Right.
now it's magic.
that was cut from Breath of the Wild. You mean that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's also the concept art of like Ganon on top of the floating island, which was cut from the original game. It's in the concept art. And then you also have, magically in this trailer, is Ganon waking up and then an island floating in the air. So they're probably going to bring back a lot of the ideas that they thought were cool in Breath of the Wild, but didn't necessarily fit with the game. So now they can somehow fit it into a different game. So go look at the... What was it? Hyrule? No.
Creating a Champion?
Yes.
The
yes.
book? It's
Creating
good
a
book,
Champion.
actually.
It has a lot of concept stuff in it that they'll probably be reusing for Breath of the Wild 2 because they said all of the DLC came about because they had too many ideas for Breath of the Wild, and then Breath of the Wild 2 came about because they had too many ideas for DLC. So, like, following the logic, all of the concept art should in some way be mechanics in the new game. But anyways, mine to end us off. Were you done, Daniel?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I was trying to think of one that I seen earlier on my channel, but I can't remember it. But there's another one that I mentioned to Daniel, and the only reason I remember it is because I did mention it to him. But I had the theory that I'm sure a lot of people had that in Ocarina of Time, Link has nothing to do with the Deku Tree dying. That just happens even after Link tries to save it. But if Link doesn't leave Kokiri Forest, it's kind of a thing like if Link never left Kokiri Forest, everything would have kind of worked out, sort of. It would have definitely been a lot better off than it ended up after you go and save everything, because after Link, you beat the first 3 dungeons and you get the stones, and then you get the ocarina and you learn the song, and then you open the door of time and you pull the Master Sword, and then it turns out Ganon gives that speech where he's like, I've been watching you the whole time, I've been leading you into this is a trap, blah blah blah. And
well,
then
spoilers.
Spoilers for
2-year-old game.
yeah.
That everybody's played, yeah.
So he basically takes over all of Hyrule. Lake Hylia is completely dried up. Zora's Domain's completely frozen. The Gerudo Town's still Gerudo Town. Kakariko Village, everyone kind of ran away from Castle Town because Castle Town was destroyed, ran over by basically zombies. And then the people that did escape to live happily in Kakariko Village, it ends up catching on fire, and a demon ghost thing breaks free from the well, and all this stuff happens. And it happened again because Link just happened to be the one who played the song to break it from the thing. So all this stuff happens, and it can all kind of in some weird way lead back to Link. It's not directly his fault, but passively, if he never left, Ganondorf would have never took over everything, because he wouldn't have been able, even if he got the ocarina, he wouldn't have known the song. He wasn't able to get the stones because he already tried to visit each of the areas. There's like all of this stuff that like he wasn't able to do, which is why he says that he tricked Link. And then even the Gorons, like he's literally feeding them to a dragon that he revived. So it's like all this stuff goes to like the worst possible version that it could. Oh, Kokiri Forest and the Lost Woods also has monsters running around in it. So even the Kokiri, which the people didn't even think were real in Castle Town, even they're being tortured. And it's all because Link left Kokiri Forest. So that was the theory that I thought of.
Should have stayed in bed.
Yeah, like if he would have stayed in bed, yeah, the Deku tree would have died, but he was dying anyways. Like Princess Ruto, the Zora, was ate by the fish.
She would have died though.
Yeah,
she would have been digested.
But then she dies anyways, because she goes into the boss chamber in the water temple and she never comes out. So, yeah. And then, so who knows? But basically, it would have been bad, but manageable. But then...
But less bad.
Yeah. And then there wouldn't have been a story or a game. So it's like, that's one of the things that if you overthink it, maybe it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, that's the whole point of the game. So, yeah. All right. But that's my theory. So I don't know if you guys want to call it bad or good, but it's one that I don't really look into much anymore. It was just an idea that I used to have when playing the game 50 times when I was a kid, because it was one of the few games I had on Nintendo 64. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I guess we can get to a couple of questions.